Cool. All right. You ready? Because this is all going to be about you.
No. All right.
Everyone has a unique gift, and Mike, the creator of the 1NELife podcast, believes most people don't know how to use their gifts
Talk
or
about you
what
guys.
they are. Mike wants you to
Our
see
show's all
things from a
about you
different
guys, so.
perspective and be true to yourself. The 1NELife podcast
we're gonna talk about
unites
the coalition.
world through art,
Yeah, I
fashion,
have all
music,
that.
and film. It inspires,
Oh, you
motivates,
got-
and creates positive
you say
energy,
you have all that?
love,
I have
and compassion to all
Okay, announcements.
communities,
Okay, cool.
and creates an equal playing field for all.
you.
On the 1NELife podcast, they cover topics
Oh, she
like
came ready
building
today.
relationships,
Oh, yeah,
overcoming
you know what?
adversity,
I might
habits of
make a
healthy
mistake
people,
once,
and
but
much,
you
much
will catch
more.
fire.
We only have one life to live. Be yourself.
But that was good, though,
and
that
live
you
your
did off
truth.
the top of
Add
your
the
head.
1NELife podcast to your playlist. That's the number one NELife. Available on Spotify,
Yeah, good.
Amazon Music, Apple
is gonna be fun.
Podcast, and your favorite podcast platform.
Make it fun.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to the 1NELife podcast. I am Mike MIC Reed, and as always, I got Diana Gaddy doing it the Gaddy way from the AV Wellbeing Coalition today with us. And today we have her husband, Brian Gaddy, in the building with us. How you doing today, man?
I'm good. How you doing,
Good.
sir?
Thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Oh, good. But first, we're going to check in with Diana with the AV Wellbeing Coalition. And what kind of updates you got for us?
Hello. We are having a ninth annual Christmas meal for the Unhoused on the 11th of December. They are in need of donations, volunteers, and for more information, please reach out to Ruth at 661-202-4912 with the ACLU AV chapter and the Dolores Huerta Foundation. And we also have with our Marines, we had Jimmy on the show, right?
Yes.
And they are having a toy drive, which is located in 237 Columbia Way in Lancaster, California. And of course, if you have any information regarding the AV Wellbeing Coalition, you can always find us on Instagram at the AV Wellbeing Coalition.
Cool. Now, as far as the toy drive, do they have a cutoff date?
You know what? They did not, but I would say probably 2 weeks before Christmas would be good.
Okay.
So
And who's their contact?
Jimmy with the Marine, with the Veteran Foundation.
Okay, yeah. I forgot his not hashtag, his IG.
You know what? Yeah. Let's see.
All good.
Okay.
Hey, so that's it for you, AV Wellbeing?
That's it. That's all we have for today.
All right, then. So tomorrow, Small Business Saturday, November 26th, you guys, from 12 to 4 p.m. on the Boulevard in Lancaster. They have Small Business Saturday, so come support local, shop small.
Yeah, and actually, Pretty Little Poppy.
Yes.
They will be having also their small business and the raffle. That always catches my eye. I love it.
They teaming up with the Boulevard for a $500 raffle. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're
Loving
feeling
it.
lucky, come on down to Pretty Little Poppy.
Yeah. Also, I got some things coming up. You guys, some exciting things coming up. Just had a quick little convo with What's Up AV with Nick. We're going to be doing something special here on the podcast in a couple of weeks. Actually, not in a couple of weeks, actually next week. So you guys stay tuned to that. And we got some great things coming up entertainment-wise with Latifah. Shout out to Latifah. Hey. And we're about to do big things. I mean, we all coming together, collaborating, and that's what it's all about for us to bring, the AV on the map. It's going to take all of us to do it.
That's
It's community over competition, you guys. It's going to take all of us to bring all this together.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Exactly. All right, so let's get into it. So today, again, we got Diana Gaddy. Now, Brian, I wanted to ask you this because Diana gave me an explanation, but I was still confused.
Sure.
How do you pronounce your last name?
Gotti.
Gotti?
Gotti. Gaddi.
So
I
you
pronounce it Gotti.
You say Gotti. So why?
Yes, well, because the double D, it's not a long A, so it shortens it out.
That's true. I like Gaddy though.
Yeah.
I like Gaddy for some reason. I don't know, but I mean, if it's Gotti, then we got to go with Gotti.
No, I guess it depends on who wants to pronounce it. I accept Gaddi, but me myself, I like to pronounce it Gotti. Mm-hmm. Why not?
I'm not mad at that though. I'm not mad at that.
Oh, he had me at the last name. When I saw that last name, I was like, that looks good behind Diana, right?
That looks good.
It sounds strong. It sounds strong.
Yeah.
What do you want us to use?
Gotti would be good.
Gotti? Are you okay with Gotti?
Yeah, I love it.
Okay.
There you go.
The Gotti way.
The Gotti
So we're gonna
way.
change it. The Gotti way.
There you go.
All right. So this show is all about you guys. So we
Yeah.
want to know about you guys.
Okay.
How long y'all been together?
About 18 years, married 16, 2 beautiful kids.
So tell me, I love to hear a great story about how people met.
Yeah. Do you want to lead, Brian?
Sure. It was around 2004. I was trying to figure things out in life, figure out my direction. You know, I was working for a club, but I knew I wanted more. So I decided to enroll myself in medical assisting school, a program out in Panorama City. So I signed up there, and my first day I walked in, I noticed her there. And from there we became good friends through class and hanging out, and we just developed a good friendship relationship.
Yeah, he caught my eye. There was something different about him.
So was it, I know it's cliche, but was it love at first sight?
I would say, yeah. Honestly, it really was. When I saw him, it was different. You know, he didn't come in wanting that attention or searching for it. He really was himself. And he sat and he was quiet. And I was like, oh, I like that.
You like the quiet type?
I really do. I do. I like that. I like that
So,
about
you
him.
know, the reason why I brought, and I was really excited about doing the show is because I haven't really touched on relationships.
Yeah.
You know, because the show is really based on, you know, owners and, you know, their stories and, you know, trying to inspire and uplift the community. But it's also about, it's everything. It's relationships as well.
Yes.
I think for me, I want to just create a platform where people of, you know, all different type of walks and just different situations, including relationships wise, tell their stories. And I know you guys got an incredible relationship. I saw that from day one when I met you guys. And I just kind of wanted to touch on that.
Yeah. Well, you know, so the AV Wellbeing Coalition, that is I guess it's our hub, right? But the program that we were all a part of through Applied Positive Psychology is based on the PERMA method. And through the PERMA method, you know, it's the positive emotions, the engagement, and then the relationship. The relationship part is what really caught my eye out of everything through the PERMA method. But when I see it all coming together, you know, with emotions and, you know, health and everything coming together, I said, it's a key in relationship, and people don't really realize that, right? If you're really not feeling good about yourself, are you going to allow someone else to see that in you? And something to me that stuck with me is when you think of intimacy, right? You think of what? You think of sex, or you think about the way someone looks. But what people don't realize is you're really letting someone look into me. Intimacy, right? You're allowing people to see who you really are. And I think that's what really connected Brian and I, that we were friends before anything.
Right.
You know, there was no real like, oh, I'm trying to hook up, I'm trying to get with this, or vice versa. You know, in fact, I guess I kind of was trying to holler at him. I told him like, man, I'll drive A through Z for you, you know, and he was like, nah, you're not my type of girl. But it's because I was just out, like just talkative. And to a point, you would say a little confident, right? In what I was doing and how I was moving. I thought I knew where I was going, but in reality, I was just living in the moment. But I think that's what kind of brought us together, right?
Right. I think the fact that, I think the fact that we were both focused on our own lives, you know, focused on trying to build ourselves instead of just trying to fill a void that we didn't have as far as like love, relationship goes. I think the fact that we're just so trying to build ourselves, it formed a better unity at the end.
Right. And, you know, again, that's why I wanted to bring this up, because I definitely want to talk an extent to this, because both, you know, I've been married twice, and both I'll be honest and say all my relationships, they've always been long term. Like I've been married twice, but those are long term. Like my first marriage was 24 years. My second one was, I want to say 8-9 years. I'd known her for 10. But all my relationships, like I've only really had maybe 4 or 5 girlfriends in my entire life. I never had a short-term relationship. And that's always because, going back to even what you just said, it was a connection in the beginning. Like it was a friendship. Like I knew instantly when I met actually both my wives, like it was a connection. In both instances, I think, not that I think, but I know, like our first conversations went for hours that first day. And that's how I knew, like, oh, we have a connection. Yeah. And I just knew it.
Well, I try to hook Brian up with half my friends.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I was, I want to say I am, and I want to say I was insecure. And I think on our first podcast, I kind of brought it up how I dealt with some shaming growing up. Mm-hmm. You know, my mom always reminded me that because I was heavy, that I would never be loved. You know, someone wasn't going to love me for who I was because of what I look like. Mm-hmm. So look at him, he's hot, you know, he's so handsome. And I thought to myself, well, if I can just be his friend, I'm okay. That satisfied me. And I think that's why we connected, because we were such good friends. And then I thought to myself, well, if I can hook him up with my friend, at least I can talk to him and see where that goes. But it just didn't work out. And my best friend, Linda, was like, how are you going to try to hook me up with him if you like him?
Now, does she know the story?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's my best friend to this day. Well, Jessica was like our third man. She was with me through all of that, and I didn't have the courage to be alone with him, so I would drag Jay with me, like, girl, come on, let's go. Like, he used to work at the club, so I was like, you want to go to the club? You want to go to the club? So poor thing, she was with me Monday through Friday at the club because Brian worked at the club.
So everybody in your circle does that?
As far as?
Always hooking people up with their friends.
No, we don't. But it was funny because they knew that I was into him, and they were just like, no, man, just go for it. And I finally did. And I was like, all right, he's not showing interest in them, and he keeps calling me. You know, his car at that time wasn't working, and he was in the valley, and I lived here in Palmdale, and that was my chance. He was like, man, I don't know how I'm gonna get to school. I was like, well, I can pick you up. I shot my shot. I shot my shot.
So the first time you guys met, to like when did it become like a dating thing?
Well, she had a show that she wanted to go to. She was, I guess, seeing some guy, and so she wanted to go see him perform. But I guess it was just a way to convince me to go out with her, you know. Mm-hmm. So it felt friendly enough, so I didn't feel uncomfortable. So we went out, we went out as a group, and that was pretty much the night. And she was always trying to hook up with me, and I didn't really want to pursue anything further and kind of ruin or mess up our friendship because everything was going so well. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't really looking for a relationship with anybody at that time. I was just really focused on myself and trying to get myself there. But that night, I don't know, it felt right. So that was like the first night we kissed pretty much. And then after that,
wait, who made the first move?
I don't know. She did.
Wait, so you liked him.
Yeah.
But you was going to see a show that somebody you was...
Yeah, so I was talking to this guy, and it wasn't actually anything serious. Again, he lived like in a whole nother city. Mm-hmm. I lived in Palmdale. It was kind of like, yeah, we're young. It didn't really mean anything. And he was like, yeah, you should invite Brian, the guy you're talking to. Like, that would be great. But he was a friend after that. There was no real connection. Like, yeah, I guess you could meet someone and be like, all right, they're cool. And then when you really get to meet them, you're like, ugh, it's not really where I want to be.
And that's I want to say that's the space I'm in now. Only because, again, I've always had long-term relationships. So for me, because I'm so much into energy, and I know people, and I know I say this a lot, but it's true because I pay attention to people, right? I pay attention to their habits, what they're doing. So for me, like even like now that I'm in this space where I am single, and I've been on like a few like I don't want to call them dates, but what do you call if it's not a date? Like if you just meet somebody, you go out one time. I don't know what you call it.
I
don't know what the terminology is.
To feel it out, I guess.
Yeah.
Like a meet and greet.
Yeah, it really is.
But no, I mean my point is like I've been on a few of those, right? And like, and mind you, everybody that I've been out with is super cool. Super cool. Like I like them as friends, you know. And obviously, yeah, when you meet somebody, you go out to see, you know, you go on this little coffee date or dinner date, whatever, you just see if, you know, what transpires. But for me, because I know instantly, like I feel people's energy, like I know it's not going to go anything further. So for me, I'm like very picky at this point.
Well, I never really actually had a real relationship before him. Mm-hmm. I would date, but I would tell even like my friends, like, why are you in such a long relationship? I never really dated in high school. It wasn't late until later on that where I got to meet him as a person, as a friend, without that, you know, jumping into hooking up or then being like, I really don't like this person kind of deal. So it was really different. I'm like on the flip side of you.
Right.
Where I would just kind of get to know if I really like, and it's like, they're more like a friend kind of deal than anything else. And it wasn't until like, you know, we really got to know each other. And I'll always remember this. We were driving down an alley and he put his hand on my lap for the first time and my heart just stopped because I didn't know where that would lead to. Because like you said, I really love where we were going. He was my best friend at that time too.
I think when you go into something with an expectation, a lot of times it leads into disappointment, you know?
Right.
So when you go and look for a relationship, you're just trying to find something in that person that probably isn't there because that's something you and your heart is looking for. But I think if you're going to get blessed, it's going to be blessed through certain situations that you wouldn't expect.
No, absolutely. I think even with like mine, I wasn't expecting either one of my relationships. Like, and when I say like really 4 or 5 people, I'm actually thinking about it as we're talking about it. I've always, for some reason, I've always wanted to be in relationships. Like my first girlfriend was at 12 years old, and I'm still good friends with her. And that's the thing. Like everybody that I've been in a relationship with, I'm always good friends with. Like I'm still good friends with everybody. Like I never ended anything on a bad thing.
I got a question though for you, Mike.
Yes.
Well, why is it that you need that or feel that you need that?
I don't need it. I just like it. It's a difference. Like I don't need it. Like I really don't. I just like it. I like the companionship. I love I love being married. Like, because a lot of people are asking me, like, Mike, you've always been in a relationship, like, be by yourself now, like start loving yourself, blah, blah, and all that, right? But for me, I've been living by myself now for 3 years, and I can be honest, I don't like it. I don't. Like, you know when you like something and you know what you like. I like coming home to somebody. I love cooking with somebody. Because honestly, in both my wives, like, it's never been situations where, babe, do this, babe, do that. Like, we always, like, knew each other so well. Like if she was doing laundry, I'll go behind her and do fold clothes. If she was cooking, I'll go behind her and clean up. Like it was never, babe, do this. Babe, can you do this? Like we just knew each other so well, right? And it's just, I love that. I love the pillow talk. I love the, you know, talking about life, like our journey, like what we're doing, our plans and all that. I just love it. I love the companionship of it all.
You know, it's a trip that you say that because when we got together, we really never stopped being friends.
Right.
Like,
and see, that's the next,
we never,
right. And that's what I love, the friendship of it. It's not, when I tell you, I mean, my story can go so deep, you guys, and that's for a whole nother podcast show. It's probably like a podcast at night. But when I met my second wife, like my first wife, I was obviously deep into the entertainment industry. So I was always out at night doing all kind of stuff, right? Because I was just networking. That was just my business. So, but my second wife, she took me completely out of that. Like, I never wanted to go out. Like, I always wanted to be home. Because she just showed me a whole different type of love that I didn't experience with my first wife. But it's not a bad thing. It was just different. Like with my first wife, me and her was just always out. We was at parties every weekend. Like we partied Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Because it was just my business, right? My second wife, obviously I was older, and like I just didn't want to go out no more. Like I was always in the house. Like I couldn't wait to get home. And like, 'cause we had game night together, we watched concerts on the TV. We did all kind of stuff.
That's a good relationship right there. When you're able to just hang out, not find entertainment to keep you guys entertained, you know, where you don't have to be a part of the crowd, going to the movies all the time, going to clubs. You know, it's good to have a companion where you're able to just sit down.
And I think and not to even like minimize like my first wife, like I said, because we was married the longest, and me and her are best friends to the day. Like I was just with her the other night with my daughter, and because she has the 2 kids that I have, but we was young when we first got together. Like she was 18, I was 19. So yeah, we was always. That's why we was always out, because we was young, we was partying, you know. But we experienced that life, and that life was great, right? I think now, like if me and her were together now, I think it'd be more of a homebody, right? So it was just 2 different type of lifestyles that I got to enjoy, honestly.
I think we transitioned through all of that you say, but together, because I was 20, yeah.
We're at 2021.
Yeah, because I wasn't 21. He actually worked at the club. So I told my friends, like, you guys don't got to be 21. I got the hookup. So we got to experience all of that through him. So I grew up in a very strict Catholic home. You know, my mom's super old school. I begged and begged to just go out to a club at 18 years old. My mom was like, I don't care. You still live under this roof. So when I met him, there was so much freedom. You know, there was no fear. You know, I grew up here and he grew up in Hollywood, where I was just like, man, that's what I want to experience. That's what I want to know what it's like. So when we got together, that's why I was always at the club, because I felt like VIP. Like I would just walk up to the door and they would remove you know, the rope, and it was all types of celebrity parties. And he brought me to New York. That was our first trip together, and I barely knew the cat, you know, and we were like, yeah, I'm going to New York with my boyfriend. And, you know, and at that time, my dad had got sick with the cancer. So the shackles had loosened up. And he showed me how safe I can be, and how I don't know, how I could be myself. You know what I mean? Without fear. And I didn't know what that was like. So it was a really different experience with him. And he gave me that unconditional love. I didn't have to wear makeup. I didn't have to dress up. I didn't have to impress him. You know, we would laugh and talk and do everything. Like, you want to go to this show? You want to go to that show? Yeah, you want to go to my mom's house? We're doing this with family. And it was such a beautiful transition where we balanced out well, you know, where he had his strengths and I had mine. And it was so beautiful. And to this day, we still keep that, you know. We were just at the Wu-Tang concert, and then we're at the Elevation Worship concert. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's pretty much like going with the flow, riding the wave, right? If you're gonna join in somebody's life or lifestyle, you just kind of got to grow right with their wave, right? And then together, you know, jump off and jump on and get on each other's lane and go for the cruise and enjoy the ride.
Now, see, I love that because you reminded me of, like, would you guys consider yourself soulmates?
Yes.
Yes.
100%, right?
Yes, 100%.
Now, a friend of mine, she reminded me of something to where it's what my first wife always tell people, because me and her got together when we was young age, but she still tells people that me and her are soulmates. And she tells people you don't have to be together to be soulmates, right? And a good friend of mine now, who I just met like this year, she's like a really good friend of mine right now. Not that we're dating anything, like we're just friends. And she says the same thing. Like, she calls it twin flames. Like, but you don't have to be in a relationship to experience that. And it's just so true. Like, for me and like my first wife, Nina, the way we met, we was meant to be together. Whether that was relationship wise, or just like even like friends now? Because I don't think I told this story. I don't think I told you the story, right? How we met.
No.
So we actually met when we was like maybe 6 or 7 years old, and we had no clue.
Oh, I think you did say that. Then there was a picture taken of you guys, right?
Yeah. So we had no clue until we had my son. And when she was pregnant with my son, her aunt had asked her, like she was telling something about me, and she was like, "Oh, do he have a brother by the name of blah blah?" And she was like, "Yeah." She was like, "I think I know him." And Nina was like, "What do you mean?" She was like, "Yeah, I know." Like she was like, "We know them." Like our families know each other. So Nina was like, "What are you talking about?" She was like, "When you guys was kids." So my older brother was at a baptism. My older brother was the godfather of her cousin something. So we were all at the same baptism. I mean, afterwards, we went to El Torito's, and me and her sat next to each other, which is crazy because her aunt, when I was telling the story, was like, "Yeah, I made a comment saying, oh, y'all look cute together." Like we sat next to each other, and they took a picture of it. And we were like, what? So that's crazy that we met way back then, right? And we didn't know until like I was 25 when I had my son. So, but when me and Nina met, like I was 19 when we met, so 6 years prior, even how we met, because I was doing a show, because I grew up in the entertainment industry doing music. So I was actually at a show at Mental Mondays at the Palladium. And I was on the second floor, right, at a club. So picture this, at a club. You work clubs, right? At a club, second floor, right? It's dark in the club, right? Music, can't hear, can't see shit, really. She was on the bottom floor. And I just happened to look over the rail, and I was telling her to pick something up. And she was looking up at me, talking like, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Stay right there." And I walked down the stairs, and I went by her, and I came next to her, and I picked up this dime. And I said, "I was telling you to pick up this dime." And she looked at me. She was like, "How did you see a dime from way up there?" I was like, "I have no idea." Like something just drew me to her to go pick up that dime. Like I have no idea how I saw it in the dark club. And ever since then, like obviously we built a friendship. And I think that's important, like how you were saying. Like we had built this strong friendship in the beginning. And that's why I think we're friends to today, because of our friendship that we had built.
You know, when you did say that to me, I thought to myself, why is Mike not with Nina?
I know everybody asked that because we have mutual friends, because we was together for so long. People always ask us that. I don't have an answer. I don't have a educated answer for that.
I mean, do you think it's because you guys divorced, you married someone else, you moved on, there's other things not coming back to it?
Well, I mean, again, so I left the marriage, right? Because I felt like I needed to grow. Like I felt the tension in the house, like we was going through some things, and I needed to like grow and change. And we was kind of like growing at different paces, you know, which everybody does, right? Like we wasn't growing together. And I felt like there was a lot of things I needed to work on. Like I knew it. I saw it. I saw it in her eyes. I saw it in my kids' eyes. I saw that I didn't have good energy in the house. So I removed myself. And I met somebody else, and that's how I met my second wife. And what's crazy is because Nina was raised by her dad. And so she's more of a hard person. Like not saying that in a bad way, but like she didn't have that motherly love, I guess. Right. Like she has it for her kids, right? But it was just different, right? So when I met my second wife, she showed me that. Like, cause I never got, like me and Nina experienced something different, which, you know, I love, and, you know, obviously because we're still friends, but we just experienced something different. Like I loved her for different reasons. I loved being with her for different reasons. But when I met my second wife, she actually showed me that motherly love. Cause remember, go back, my mother, passed away when I was 5 months. So I never had a mom in my life, except for my grandmother who raised me, but I was on my own since I was 14. So I never really had that motherly love. Nina didn't give that to me. Isis did, my second wife. So she showed me that motherly love, right? So that was the difference between the relationships. And I learned a lot in that relationships, to where, again, going back now, why I'm so picky is because I've had, I guess you can say, I experienced both worlds. with the motherly love and without it. So I know what I want. Like I kind of like combined it. If that makes sense.
So what do you think you feel like you like more, the first type of for your first marriage or your second, as far as the motherly love goes?
Okay, so and that's why I said like I can combine it now because I love the friendship that I had in my first wife, and that's why me and her are friends to today. But I loved my second wife. I love the fact of the whole marriage, like that motherly love, like the things that we did together. I'm not explaining it, but
I think, I can honestly say that we created that because although I had my mom and my dad,
right.
I didn't have my mom and my dad.
Mm-hmm.
My mom, so my grandmother, she was mute and deaf.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom was given up. So she was a love child. My grandfather was very wealthy. We don't know exactly where the roots of my grandmother are from. They say she just appeared at their home one day and no one really knows who she is or where she came from. But they say that she was just this beautiful woman that just knew that she needed to survive. So she tells my grandfather, like, just give me a place to stay and food to eat and I'll clean. So, they say that she used to bathe at night and, I guess my grandfather had his way with her and here comes my mom. So my mom dealt with a lot of trauma that came from that. So because she was mute and deaf, but very gorgeous, she was raped a lot of times. And no one could hear her asking for help because she couldn't say it. And she couldn't tell people what had happened to her because she couldn't speak. Wow. So my mom grew up with a different family where she would see my grandmother and they would say, oh, the mute one, she's your mom, huh? My mom grew up with that embarrassment. So there was a lot of trauma that came from that. So my mom didn't really know how to, and I can't say she didn't know how to love, and it's what I'm learning now, is that she loves me in the best way that she possibly can, right? But I'm an American child in America, right? Where everything is different. But what I failed sometimes to realize is that even through all of that, she was able to come to this country and still move forward with her husband, right? And my father is her second marriage, I would say. She had my eldest brother with a previous man, but what I always admired about my father is that we never grew up knowing that he wasn't my half brother until later on in life, where he grew up with the same last name until legal paperwork. They're like, ma'am, this is not his father, his last name. So I always admired my dad a little bit more of that because my mom, she was very angry. She didn't really know how to show the affection where my character strength is love. I mean, I love like crazy.
Well, right, because she didn't have that growing up.
Right.
And that's why what I meant about like like Nina, right? Her dad raised her. So if her mom was in the picture, then she'd be totally different. And not saying how she was raised was wrong because her dad is a great guy. Like he's raised her pretty well. Like, cause Nina's very successful. She's smart. It's just a different type of mindset that she had, right?
Yeah. Well, my father worked so he was a painter. He had his own company, and he traveled down to like Santa Monica, Bel Air, every single day from Palmdale. We moved here in '92. From Echo Park area. We used to live on Lucas, right down the street from Belmont High. So, I mean, I'm sure you used to hear about the tunnels, right? Yeah. So I lived right across the street, super active. Right. But my parents knew that they wanted something better for us, and we moved here to Palmdale, right? Where it got worse. The disconnection was real. And I had certain traumas throughout my life where it was really hard for me to process certain things. And I think that's why, I deal with a lot of insecurities, and I build huge walls and with boundaries. So it was really challenging as far as when you say that, like, she just didn't show me that. Sometimes I think that it's challenging going through certain traumas in life to be able to go over those hurdles, right? So with me, I would always sit there and watch like love stories. I'm a sucker for love. I really am, but I really didn't learn it from my parents. And, when he met me, he was like, oh, she comes from a big family. We do a lot of things. But in reality, I used to think that it was a weakness, but my resiliency is just wild. It's off the chart. And I didn't know that.
That's, and it's crazy because I don't know where, I guess I can track it. Like I was going to say, I don't know where my love for love came from, because I guess I can track it to where, like, I grew up in like a gang infested neighborhood, right? And I grew up in South Central, and I always knew that wasn't the lifestyle that I wanted, right? I saw the stuff that was going on. I was like, I don't like that. Like, for some reason, I don't know if it's because my mom and I didn't grow up with our parents, like, but I knew the concept of it. You know what I mean? And I had 7 brothers and sisters, like, and only person that I was really close to was my sister, who was at the house with my grandmother. So it was me and my sister. My other brother and sister lived somewhere else. So I don't know if it was the concept of that, because I knew what it was and I didn't have it, and I wanted that as a child, right? And then by being on my own since I was 14, like, I always wanted it. And so when I found Nina, like, I found, I guess, a close friendship with her that was, I guess, in my mind, was family, right? Because her dad and his new wife took me in, so to speak. So I was always at their house, like, every weekend, eating dinner. Like, that was like my new family. Like, and to this day, like, I'm still close with them. And then when I met my second wife, and I'm trying to put all this together, right? Because as we're talking about it, it's going through my mind. My second wife, me and her became close because she kind of went through a similar situation. Like, even though she had both her parents, but they treated her like crap. Like, she's from Honduras. So you can imagine, her first 10 years in Honduras was just horrible, like how they treat women over there and child. So that's what she had to go through. And then she came here, she was abandoned by her mom, and she just went through all kind of trauma. And that's part of the reason why we're not together to today, because of all the trauma she had to go through, and she's kind of reliving it now. So, obviously it didn't work out. But but I learned from being with her, like, the first 8 years of me and her together. You know how they say God puts people in your lives for a reason? Yeah. Like, when I left my first marriage and I got with her, like, he literally put her in my life for a reason. Like, he connected us, so we had similar stories, but he taught me so much about love and life. And I tell people all the time, like, the tools that I have now, if I would have had during my first marriage, I would have saved my marriage. But it took me to leave to get the tools, which is kind of crazy.
Sometimes you don't realize what you need in your life until it's put in front of your face.
Exactly.
You were exposed to love. That's why you're always attracted to it. Little did you know that you were actually exposed to it, even though the streets were fun, and that's something that we were attracted and lured to. But in the back of our head, we knew that we weren't gonna do that for the rest of our life. There was something in the back of our head that knew that it was wrong at the end of the day. So you had love in your heart since you were small.
Yeah, I think I did, and that's why I, like, to today, I love, and just like, because people always asking me, like, why am I searching for it? It's because I do. Like, I love the companionship. I can honestly say that with, even if, like, because I've been single for 3 years now, right, and I'm very picky again. Even if I don't get married again or date, like, I can honestly say I'm grateful for both my marriages and all my relationships. Like, because we all go through things for a reason. Like, I would never say, oh, because both marriages didn't work out, right? I'm not going to sit here and bash them. Like, I learned so much from both of them. I enjoy, the saying, it's better to love than not to have loved at all, right? Yeah. So I I can honestly say I had 2 great marriages. Like I can sit here and just be like, wow, I actually had great times and great moments with them, both. You know, do I want that again? Yeah, absolutely. But I'm picky about it. Even though I want it, like, I'm not going to rush into it.
Right. I mean, go ahead.
Well, those are lessons and blessings, you know.
Right.
Those 2 marriages, you know, God gives us 2 of those things. You know, we get lessons, we get blessings from them, you know. So those 2 marriages were just lessons that you learned.
Exactly. And I'm always grateful for my lessons.
For sure.
No, it's true. And then that's where I say with Brian, things were so different. There was no judgment at all. He did allow me to grow and accept my truth, we can say. And he nurtured me through all of that. And I had never felt a security, a true love like it was, because there was no, sorry.
Okay.
You good? I'm going to start bringing tissue to the show, because this is the second time you're crying on the show.
Yeah. Because, you know, what I tell, I say this a lot, vulnerability, people really think it's weakness, but it's not.
It's not, yeah.
It's really strength. And if I didn't know how to utilize that, I don't know where I would be today. I can honestly say that, because, I mean, we had such a great relationship, and then we had the kids, and then I was diagnosed with cancer. And then the ugly came, where I told him, you need to leave me, because how could someone like you be with someone that's sick? You know, someone that's sick. So I hear you when you do say that, but if you're not able to succumb all of that, where would we be today?
Right.
I mean, sometimes people say, you guys are so perfect. What do you guys know about problems? What do you guys know? Oh my goodness.
You know, like I was saying earlier, Nina and I, we have a lot of mutual friends, and they always ask us, to this day. Matter of fact, I had dinner with a friend of ours 3 weeks ago, and she always is asking, hey, you and Nina get back together? You know what I mean? But it's because when me and Nina was married, right, people always looked at us like we was the fun couple. They never saw us argue, never saw us fight. But that's because we never brought our problems out into the street in front of everybody. Like, they didn't know what was going on inside the house, right? But because marriage is not easy.
No,
it is not. I mean, people used to see us and be like, wow, that's the perfect couple. And it's like, thank you, but like, you don't see what goes on in the house. Like, it's not easy. It's hard keeping a relationship.
Right. What people see in a successful marriage is the success, right? They see what they see, but they don't see the determination, the commitment, the bond, the trust, the connection that people have for one another.
Right.
You know, they don't see the struggles; they only see the success.
Right. Exactly. And you know what? And even with my second marriage, and this is why, honestly, I think the last. She moved out 3 years ago. I think over the last 6 months is when I decided to finally let go, because I was still trying. Like last year, I spent a day with her, like during Christmas. Like, I was still trying, because I know what it takes to keep a relationship. I know it's going to be hard. I know it struggles, but I'm also committed. When I say I'm committed to you, I'm committed to you. Like, when I get married, especially when I get married to you, like, that's, like, to me, that's no joke. Like, I'm committed to you. Like, I don't care how many problems we got. We're going to get through it together. And that's a key word, together. We going to get through it. But a lot of people, they give up for whatever reason, you know. So my second wife, she gave up for whatever reason. And I kind of get it, like, because I know her struggles. And like I always tell people, I know her background. Like, I know her story. I'm not mad at her, because I know what she's going through. And I know I finally had to learn that I can't fix her. And that's what I was trying to do all these years. I was literally trying to fix her. And it's like, I can't. Like, and it hurts me to even say that, because I know her struggles. Like, I want to see her happy. I want to help her, but I know I can't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You know what was great about us is that Brian never tried to fix me. Brian actually accepted me.
Right.
And I had never experienced that.
But I don't mean like fix, like change you. Like,
no,
you know what I mean? Like,
you're saying.
Like, cause she, all the trauma she's been through, like I was trying to help her.
Yeah.
And that's what I meant by fix. Like, I was trying to get her through it, but I couldn't do it. Like, she has to get through it.
Maybe it was the type of approach. Your intentions were well,
right,
and they were right, but the way to connect and for her to respond to how you're trying to fix her, right? Mm-hmm. It was just not the way she wanted to be fixed.
And I would take responsibility for that, because and again, over the last 6 months, I really had to evaluate everything and go through it, and I finally did accept that. Like, I know I did some things where I can look back now and be like, wow, I shouldn't have did that, because now understanding her story, her situation, maybe I did approach it wrong in certain situations. I did approach certain situations wrong, because I'm not totally like blaming her for it, because it takes two people, and I know I got to accept responsibility for my part of the marriage.
Yeah, I always say those are landmines. Mm-hmm. They're landmines, right? When you're walking in through a field of landmines, people don't tell you that that's where the bomb is.
Right.
And unfortunately, what do we do when we step on them? Boom.
Boom, yeah.
And that's sometimes like, I would tell Brian certain things, but I would always be like, oh, he doesn't hear, but he really did. Mm-hmm. You know, like I say, my appearances is like the worst for me. And even when I come out the shower, he's like, dang, you look good. And I'm like, ugh, let me hide behind that. But although he knows that that is a weakness for me, right? I allow myself to be vulnerable, and he knows how to heal me in a certain way, where he never really is he's not doing these things intentionally to say, oh, I'm going to fix No, there's something, even like sometimes with like a tight dress, or he'll be like, damn, babe, you look bomb. And I'm like, ugh, okay. But it's that, to me, are my landmines.
Right.
You know, and at least he's been through our conversations. And yes, we have been married for 16 years, but I will say this, when we moved back to Palmdale, I think our relationship got stronger than ever. And then COVID hit. And I always say, you know, some people, yes, there were struggles through COVID, but for Brian and I, it was really a revelation.
That's good.
Because we discovered DoorDash, and we discovered what Uber Eats, and anything that we can be on the road. But, you know, sometimes we would laugh because we didn't even know where we were going, or we would lose track of time. But we were talking. Conversation above everything. We don't know how to do that. Even through our insecurities, or we want to input, we didn't really know how to listen. But we really would drive sometimes for like 3-4 hours and be in such deep conversations because we actually finally stopped.
I think COVID was important for everybody, for the world to stop like that. It exposed a lot of fake relationships or facade relationships, where the relationship looked good, but that's because they were surrounded by a lot of people, a lot of entertainment, going to clubs, entertaining themselves. But when they got forced into just staying into a house between them two, or between us two, that either makes you or break you, you know? Do you really get along with that person? That was a moment where you really found out what your relationship was about, you know? So it actually really did make our relationship stronger. You know, we had simple conversations, laughs, everything, you know.
Cries.
Fights.
Believe me, there was a little bit of everything in there.
But I mean, that's what every relationship, though. I mean, and I think that's the problem, I'm going to say, that people don't understand when they get into a relationship. Like, it comes with it. The laughs, the fights, the cries, it's all of it, you know. And I think that's why I can say that because I know that and I understand it, and that's why probably all my relationship lasted longer, because I am understanding of that. Like, I go into a relationship knowing, like, this thing, like, what relationship you know is perfect? There's not, right?
I mean, name him.
Yeah, humans are just
I think
different.
people are always looking for that perfect relationship, that
Yeah.
one somebody that's just gonna make everything perfect. And it's like, no, it's not gonna happen. And I think I go into a relationship knowing that. So I expect the fights, the cries, the arguments. Now I can say that I know how to handle them better.
Right.
I know boundaries now. I know, like, if we get into an argument, I know when to give you a space. I know when I need a space, and space is okay. Because that's one thing I think I had to learn on early. Because with my first wife, when she used to tell me that too. She's like, I just need space. And for me, whenever I argued with her, it was like, no, we're gonna finish. We're gonna do this now. Like, what are you talking about? You need space. Like, no, we're gonna finish this argument now. Like, that was my mentality. But now it's like, okay, cool. Go get your space.
Can you?
Yeah, I'm the same way.
No.
Yeah, it's hard because like when you get in the fight, you kind of don't want it to linger, right? Especially
Right.
as men. So we feel like we need to extinguish it now, either we're good or not. Let me know. If we're not good, let's continue it. If we're good, let's talk about it now.
Right. So is that a man thing? I think that is.
I would think so.
Why you laughing? It is a man thing. I think like we want to just finish it now.
Right, because if we're good, we're good. And let's
Yeah.
move on, because I don't want to keep fighting. The reason I'm fighting because I don't want to fight.
Right. And I think, for me, like, I think that's the biggest thing for me. Like, if we're arguing, like 30, and my wife used to say this a lot. She's like 30 seconds or like an hour later, she'd be like, do you not realize we was arguing? But I'm like, I'm cool. Like, once it's done, it's done. Like, let's move on. Like, I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so cool with it. Like, if we didn't have an argument 30 minutes ago.
Right. Flip of a switch.
Yeah,
That's
it
all I
is
am.
like that. She used to look at me like,
It doesn't
I'm
work
still
that
mad at
way.
you. Yeah, she'd be like, I'm still mad at you. And I'd be like, I thought we was done. Like, I'll try to come, like, snuggle up with her. And she'd be like, I'm still mad at you. But I'm like, didn't we just finish this argument like 30 minutes ago? Like,
No. And it's so true because although I'm very emotional, but I'm very emotional because I have a lot of trauma. That I say I've gotten better. I've gotten better because I've learned certain tools, how to process my emotions. But one thing that Brian taught me, and he said, it's okay to feel your emotion. It's okay to feel that, but it's not okay to live in your emotions.
right.
But I also taught him, like, boundaries, my friend. If I tell you I need a minute, I need a minute.
Yeah.
Because you don't know, my landmines are going off like crazy right now. Boom, boom, boom. And I think that that's where the static between us would come into play.
Right. I think from an example earlier where you were trying to fix your wife, right, your ex-wife, but you didn't know how to fix it. So like in a fighting situation, you're trying to fix them and then stop the fight because we're strong. So we want to teach them to be strong too.
Right.
But by us telling them and trying to show them to be strong, it's actually hurting them and doing the opposite effect,
I mean,
Instead of
yeah,
being expanding.
like you said, it's the intention. Like, I know I had great intentions. It's just because I didn't want to see her go through that. Like, that hurt me. And I was like you said, like, I'm strong. Like, the shit I've been through when I was a kid, like the adversity I went through, like, I got over it. But I also had to learn by going to therapy is that he had this phrase that he used to say, like, buried something is still alive. Like, you know how people bury stuff in the back of their
Right.
minds, but it's still alive. Like, you don't bury nothing.
Right.
Like, and the one thing my therapist taught me is that, if you don't talk about your emotions, and that's what I did when I was a kid, I used to bury stuff.
Right.
Like, at some point, there will be an explosion. The longer you hold it in, the bigger the explosion. Oh, yeah. I learned that real fast. And he taught me that because I had a temper problem. And I always wondered, like, why? He was like, because you're burying stuff and you're holding it. So now it's finally exploding. Like, and I had to learn it. So that's why I say now I'm older, wiser. Like, I know that when someone say they need a minute, I'm like, cool, go get your minute. Like, you need 10 minutes? You got it.
Yeah, the longer you bury it, the worse it could become because
Yeah.
our fights, like lately, like when we've been fighting, it's really petty stuff,
Right.
It's nothing really serious like me going out or cheating on her or anything like that. It's very, very, very petty. So when we do fight, it just feels like the end of our relationship. It gets to
Right.
that point, it explodes that much. But I think our growth and the fact that we're aware of all these tools, right, and we're trying to learn and try to better ourselves, better our relationship, we're able to understand and listen to each other, and it takes us into vulnerability where we do cry. And then sometimes our biggest growth is from those tears.
Right.
You know, we had probably one of the worst fights that I personally felt like it was like the worst. It was like, how can I continue this? You know, like hurting my wife like that and just going through that. And so we just had a conversation. We just decided to park and just talk about it and cry and release all that emotion. And that was probably like the best day of a relationship as far as growth goes.
And see, I love that about you guys. Like, I mean, because you guys are learning together, and that's super dope.
I think we all are. I think the mistake that people make is acting like we all have it figured out.
Right.
Because as parents, as adults, as professionals, you know, we actually don't have it figured out. Every day is a new day.
Right.
Every day has its own challenges, brand new challenges. You know what I mean? So we're all growing and learning together.
Yeah, and everybody, I was just talking to somebody about this last week about parenting. Like, I don't know why they have parenting books. Like, they're useless. I'll be honest with you, because everybody's different. Every kid is different. Every parent is different. You know, I could even say, because I didn't grow up without a mom or dad, no one taught me how to, and I know this is not really an excuse, but no one taught me how to treat a woman, right? I had to learn on the fly, and I think that's where I made a lot of my mistakes, because I've been on my own since I was 14, so I never had anybody to teach me how to be a man, to teach me how to treat women, to teach me how to treat anybody for that sake.
But you know what it is? It's because you were still willing to, you were open to that, right? Like you said, no one really sat down and taught you, but I'm sure at some point you saw what you liked.
Yeah.
You would see it. Like for me, at times it was like on TV or with other people. You know, that's why I think I would love to hook up my friends with like people. You know, I felt like a matchmaker, but I think it was how beautiful it was to be loved, to love, you know, and the feeling behind that. So as a child, you know, I always knew I knew I wanted to get married. I knew that I wanted to find that, but it wasn't like I came from a perfect relationship where everything was, you know, there, or I had it, or my mom was like, oh, this is the perfect wife and all of this. But as we grew and I had my son, I was like, okay, you know, this is the real deal Holyfield. Like, but did I know what I was doing? No. And even with my kids now, it's really trial and error, you know, because I got a kid in high school and he's a junior, and my daughter is in 7th grade. And oh my God, when I tell you,
let me tell you something. It doesn't get easier.
Oh,
because I was just with my daughter the other day, and I haven't seen my daughter in a month, or even talked to her. My daughter will be 21 next month.
Oh, wow.
So, but it's funny because one day my daughter will love me. Next day she hates me. Like, I don't know why. It's just this weird relationship we have right now. And obviously I know it deep down, like we both love each other, right? And we're always cool. But like I can go over there and like I'm always with my son because I coach a soccer team, right? And I'm always over there, you know, talking to Nina. And sometimes my daughter, she just be there. She don't say shit to me. She don't come downstairs. Like, but some days she do, and she comes sit next to me. We talk like nothing happened. It doesn't get easier. It's weird. No, kids are weird.
I think I'm dealing with the same thing too. My daughter's gonna be 13, so probably nothing as deep as yours, but kind of seeing those, I guess, warning signs coming along. So I always like when I experience that, and I feel like my daughter's being a little cold with me. You know, like naturally I tend to want to give her the same medicine, you know, be cold with them as well, you know. I think that's a learning lesson that we as parents, as fathers, need to learn, you know, try to be understanding. At the end of the day, no matter how we think they feel about us, those are our kids at the end of the day. And
no, absolutely. And I've had, it's funny because I pay for her cell phone and my son's cell phone, right? So that one time she got mad at me. She wouldn't answer my phone call. And I was like, I should just disconnect this motherfucker. Like, how you not gonna ask for a phone that I pay for? You know, I mean, I was pissed that day. But it's funny because like 5 years ago, I went through a similar situation with my daughter too, where I didn't talk to her. Well, not because I hadn't talked to her, but I didn't hang out with her for like a whole year. Like I saw her through the years, not through the years, but through the whole year. And I learned a valuable lesson. So 5 years ago, when she was like 15, me and my daughter and son used to have Sunday fun days. Like we always went out to eat, did something, right? And then one day she just stopped, and she wouldn't come. Like when I went to go pick him up, she wouldn't come downstairs. She was always hiding it. And I was like, "What's going on?" And I was even asked Nina, and Nina was like, she didn't understand. Like she wouldn't talk to me or Nina. Like she talked to Nina, but not really giving her information. And we couldn't figure out what's going on. So all kind of things went through my mind. Like, cause first Nina was looking at me like, "What did you do to her?" And I was like, "I didn't do nothing to her." She was like, "Did you touch her?" Like, and I wasn't mad at her, cause like, the first thing you think about when a child, especially a female, is scared of a adult male, you start to wondering like, "Hey, what's going on?" Right. So I was like, "No, like I've never yelled at my daughter. I've never touched her, never beat her, nothing." Because my daughter was always a straight A student, always like the perfect. When I say perfect little angel, that's what my daughter was. So things start going through my mind. Was like, well, shit, did somebody touch her at school? Did something happen at school? Like we start thinking all kind of stuff, right? I even like questioned my brother, like, cause she would hang out with him and his daughter. I was like, well, shit, did he do something? Like, and it's nothing. Like, so finally Nina took her to a therapist. And so finally the therapist told us that she was scared of me. And I'm like, why would she be scared of me? Like, I never yelled at my daughter. Like, I never raised my hands at her. I never raised my voice at her, ever. And so she had told me that 10 years prior, and this is about how you can't hold things in, because when they do, it goes back to the longer you hold it in, the bigger explosion. So 10 years prior, I was, my son has cerebral palsy. So whenever my son was young, and every few years, because of growth spurts, he had to have these surgeries where they cut his legs, rotate them, and it took like months of rehab for him to learn how to walk again. So every few years we had to do that. So at one point, when I guess she was 5 years old and he was 10, he was going through, like, I think his second or third surgery, teaching him how to walk again. And because Nina always had a regular job, I didn't. So, because I was always self-employed, so I was always working at home. I took him to therapy 3 days a week, and all that stuff. And as a dad, during his third time, I was yelling at him, like, because he had showed me the bar. And I don't know if you can relate to this. As a dad, when your son shows you the bar, and then at the next time he goes, he gets halfway to the bar, and it's like, no, like, why are you giving up? Like, you already showed me what you can do.
Keep
like
pushing.
So I kept pushing him, and I don't know if it came from me, always into sports. I was just like that tough dad, like, no, go with us. I was yelling at him, cussing at him, and just get your ass up, get up, let's go. You know what I'm saying? All that is what scared her, because she was in the room. And I was like, so when they was telling me this, I was like, but I wasn't yelling at her. Right. They was like, it still affected her. And I was like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, as men, we kind of overlook that. We overlook our strength and our emotions, our masculinity. We think it's okay because for us, growing up strong, it is okay. Right. It made us who
that's how we was
today.
Taught.
Right. But we don't know, especially in today's world, we don't know how it's going to affect the next person. What I mean? So it's just all about understanding and balance, and just trying. And
I had to learn that, and so that's when I learned boundaries. Is when they told me I had to give her time and I had to give her space. So I had to learn patience really fast. So whenever I go over there, sometimes she'd be on the couch and I would say, "Hey, Kira, how you doing?" Some days she responded, some days she didn't. I had to be okay with it, even though it hurt me deep inside. I had to just have patience with her, because I know I didn't do anything wrong, but I understand the effects that happened. So for a whole year, I went through that whole process of some days she loved me, some days she don't, and it's like, okay. But for a whole year, it took her about a year for her to finally start having lunch with me and going out with me again.
I do say to Brian, although our daughter at times, she can be a little diva because, we've never, we've always raised, my kids are very spoiled. They're very, very spoiled.
Oh, mine are too.
They're very, very privileged, but again, at times we didn't have that stability either. we were young, we were growing up. So the fights would get like escalate very, very fast, quick, fast, and in a hurry. My dad is not a yeller. My mom's a yeller, but that's where I have a lot of that pushback from my mom. So at times Brian could be a yeller, and sorry, babe, but hey, sometimes it's the truth,
it's the truth.
And we're here to learn and teach,
right? Yeah. And to me, I would be like, I can't do the yelling because that's where the landmines are going off, boom, 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 and that wall was building, and then I have to, fight and flight. And then I'm pushing back, and it's like, okay, I'm really going to make you feel what I feel right now. But what we were failing to see is that our kids were watching.
Yeah.
My kids are watching, and they're taking all of this in. And not that reason, when he was saying we had a fight, and it was a mistake that I regret now. I had picked up my son, and I was just crying, and I was just like, maybe he would be better off without me. And I stupidly asked my son that. I said, do you think it's better that Daddy and I just separate? And he goes, no. He goes, you guys are really made for each other. And that really, like, I was okay after that, because I was like, oh, great, but I should have realized, but I shouldn't have put that on my son. So fast forward to like 2 weeks ago, or a week ago now, our dog passed away. And that was like on Sunday. And my son didn't really process that. Brian was off, and he wakes up and he's like in pajamas. And I was like, dude, what did you do all day yesterday? You didn't do anything. Like, how are you going to I said, no, you're not. Like, you should be ready for the day. And we go in on him. We're not realizing that my son is processing so much, and his mom had surgery the same day. The dog died. We're going in on him. And, then my daughter was having like hiccups. And when I picked them up, I asked it, like, my daughter had already gone through some shit. I got called from the school, and I'm just like, God, why? Like, is this not enough? And then I asked him, like, how was your day? He goes, I had the worst day ever. I was crying at school. And I was like, what? You crying? Because we've taught my son to suppress his emotions. Because anything that we would say, it's like, blow up.
Right.
Crying, like screaming and this and emotions and tempers, that my son finally broke. And he goes, you think that by telling me that you and Dad are separating, that didn't fuck me up? And I was like, oh my God. Yeah. We become so stuck with our own things, with our own generational baggage. Yeah. But we fail to realize is that we're loading them up.
Yeah.
We are loading them up. And then that's where I go back to, now I'm seeing this with schools. And I'm just like, these kids show up to school every day, not just with their own issues, but with their parents' luggage, rolling it through those. And guess what? Now these poor teachers are having to deal with our shit, their shit, and their own shit.
And their own shit.
You know what I'm saying? And that's why I go back to why I'm so passionate with relationships, with what we're doing today.
Right.
Because that's how we're going to feel. We're going to heal the future. How important this conversation is, how important it was for you to be vulnerable, to allow us to be vulnerable, to know, like, dang, man, we can't ignore the past because it is our truth.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that we can't grow from it. Right. We can't continue to say, well, because of that. Well, guess what? That's everybody. Like, my therapist finally told me, I get what you're saying. He goes, but people have worse problems than you.
It's true.
And he goes, but what you need to do is talk. But at times, because he can be a little bit more explosive with certain things, that I had to hide behind fear. But what have I done my whole life and my trauma? That's where there was this huge wall where anything he said, it was like, boom, this is where I'm attacking. This is attack, where we were just hurting ourselves unintentionally knowing we loved ourselves, but we just couldn't talk. Where why it was so important with COVID, when we used to drive around and just talk, we felt so good. It felt like the best time ever, you know, but I did feel guilty because we had to then leave our kids, you know, and then I was like, man, like, you know, like I want to do this. I want to do, and then I started bombarding them. And they were like, whoa, I need space. Like, I need this. But I wasn't understanding through my own guilt, through my own healing, where now I think our relationship with them it's a lot better, right?
Yeah, it's a lot better, especially with understanding, you know, and just working through it. I think we just need to put our feelings and pride aside sometimes. Yeah. It's okay to feel the way we feel, but we also got to take the other account of the other person's feelings as well, you know. And it's easy to argue our point, but what's the point of just doing that? Because there's two sides of the story.
Yeah, you can't be tunnel vision and just see things from just your perspective, because everybody receives and delivers things differently, right? So even if we're arguing, like, yeah, I can make a great point, and I use this analogy all the time. If I put a 6 in front of us, I'm going to say it's a 6, but you're going to say it's a 9.
Right.
Right? Because that's just the reality of life. Like, you see things differently. Not to say I'm wrong or you wrong. And that's why I try to tell people all the time, like, no one's ever wrong. Right. It's just from their perspective. Just because it's not your perspective doesn't mean that they're wrong. Right. They just see things differently. And it's okay. You got to understand that, and you got to be okay with that. Like you just said, we got to learn to look at things, or at least try to understand how they're seeing it, the situation, right? Yeah. And I had to learn that. So like, even like now when I'm with my son, like I used to have road rage, right? So, but now I don't, because I had to learn from my daughter's experience to where when my son was in the car, like, don't yell, because that made him nervous. And I don't want to go through the same situation. So now I'm careful when my kids are around me now, I'm like really careful what I'm doing, especially if like I'm out in public and somebody does something. But it taught me to have patience and to like turn the cheek, so to speak, and not always react to somebody because of what somebody's doing. Like, just because they're being an asshole don't mean I have to be an asshole.
No. Yeah. Thank goodness. Every day is a different day. Right. We could learn from what happened yesterday and try to make the next day better, you know, make adjustments, you know.
Right.
And that's why, you know, I do take a lot of pride being part of the AV Wellbe Coalition. And what we learned through our course in Applied Positive Psychology, I said, the first thing when I was learning all these tools, I would tell everyone, this needs to be in the schools. This needs to be in the schools. But what I was saying is, if I would have known that, all these tools as a kid, can you only imagine what my life would have been? But right. I can't go back on the past, right? Because what's done is done. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that I can't teach or show these kids. I can't say teach. Like, again, it's not teaching. It's showing, right? Guiding them through vulnerability, through personal experience. So when we do our workshops for the schools, I think to myself, these kids are coming with generational baggage, what I give my kids, right? So I'm giving that reality. So when we teach them about their character strength, that's just teaching, allowing them to see gratitude for themselves, right? Like, know your superpower and know your worth. Because I deal with my own insecurities, knowing that if I'm able to embrace them, you know, and utilize them correctly, sky's the limit, right? And then we teach them about building psychological safety. When we're going through our own traumas, did we have someone to talk to? Did we have someone to go to? Right. What did we listen to when, you know, like music, I know is something for you, right? Like, and then through COVID, a lot of these kids might be experiencing languishing. You know, languishing is a state before you go into depression. And then when you're in that depression and you're not able to come out or have tools to be able to pull yourself out, then you go into clinical depression where it comes to pills. Where how many kids are going through that now, right? And then moving on from that, we teach them gratitude, to show someone or tell someone thank you, right? Where every chance that I get, like, thanks, Mike, for allowing the platform, for allowing us to do this. You know, so I go back to imagine if if we would have known this, right? And you see this through our relationships. 3 different people that grew up in 3 different parts of the world, right? Or even in this state, but we have a lot of similarities. Right. So if we were able to channel that and understand, well, I'm feeling good, but I'm not struggling. Right. But if you're able to struggle well, you're able to flourish and flourish effectively. Mm-hmm. So that is why well-being was so important. And when I would come back home, I would tell Brian, like, oh, I learned this. Oh, I learned this. And it's okay to not be okay, but we gonna be all right, you know?
You know, you're right, and you touched on something about schools, and this is the thing, and this is why, like, I'm a big advocate for kids, and why I've always worked with kids, and I love working with kids, and I'm excited about working with the coalition, and even working with Brenda over at Pretty Little Poppy doing her workshops. It's because schools are great, and I don't want to minimize school. Education is great, right? But they teach you to go to school, get an education, and then go get a job. Be happy, right?
Right.
They don't teach you the path to all this stuff.
Right.
They don't teach you the path to get it. Like you just can't graduate college and go to like Google and get a job, right? It's not gonna happen. Like you got to have some type of experience. You got to have like a path to get there. Like you're just not gonna pick up the phone and say, "Hi, I just graduated yesterday. Hire me." Okay, you're hired. Like, what's the path in between? And that path in between is such a huge gap. All kind of stuff is going to happen. All kind of disappointments. All kind of life is going to happen, and that's what they don't teach you in school. It's how to get through that and go down that path. Because even if you, like you say, you want to work at a Google or a MGM or Universal, whatever you want to do, right? There's still that path you have to walk, and everybody has a different path. But we gotta kind of teach kids, like, don't think it's a straight line, because it's not. Like, you're going to go through so many struggles, and you're going to get off course, and it's okay to get off course. It's okay to circle back to something, to learn something, and to get to your destination.
Right. It might be the same path that we're all walking on, but depending on the day, it's different. Some day might be raining, some day it might be sunny. You know what I mean? Same path, just a different circumstance.
Right, but they don't teach you that. I mean, think about how many. I don't even know the percentages, but I know it's high. Think about how many people graduated college and got these college degrees. How many people are actually using their college degrees?
Right.
They're not, because they didn't teach them the path.
Right. That's why I always say, Brian taught me this, right? What's the difference between wisdom and what is it?
Education?
Yeah.
Well, see, the thing about education is you get taught this, right? And it's something that you think you're supposed to use. But as far as like wisdom, I think the nice thing about wisdom is it never expires.
Right.
Somebody could teach you something at that moment, but it's up to you to accept it or reject it, right? So even if you rejected it at that point, that wisdom, the seed was planted. Right. That maybe it wasn't for you at that moment, but later on in life, you remember that the wise things that was once taught you to you, and you get that seed at that moment, and then you build from that moment. It's wisdom doesn't expire, so if they teach you that back then, it could be useful.
Yeah. And it comes with experience.
Right. I think wisdom you can take, like you said, it doesn't expire. You can take that and apply it to anything in life.
Right.
But if you go, and again, I'm not knocking education, so no teachers get mad at me.
No.
But if you go to school and you learn a trade, you're limited to that trade. But at the same time, if I teach you how to, matter of fact, prime example, because I have a graphic design background, right? Never went to school for it, anything. But I've probably designed everything that you possibly see when you walk out these doors on television, on billboards, right? Never went to school for it. So when people tell me they go to college and they get a graphic design degree, I'm like, for what? Because school can teach you how to use Photoshop, right, Adobe Illustrator, all that, right? They can teach you the functions. Wisdom is going to teach you the creativity.
Right. The experience.
The experience, right.
Yeah.
Like, they can only teach you the functions, but they can't teach you how to be creative. It's either in you or it's not.
Right. I mean, like for me, I love what I do. And even with my friends, I don't sit there and try to fix their problems. We try to work through it, or through I'll share experiences and my vulnerability. And I'm not, and it's not that I'm not big in school, is during my school journey, there was a lot of trauma that happened. Mm-hmm. So I failed 7th grade, I repeated 7th grade. So I always punished myself for that. And I never allowed myself to grow. Did I want to be, even when I was in high school, I had told my mom, I want to be a sex therapist, but what it's really called is positive sexuality. But the reason why I was so passionate about it was, if we are able to heal that, you can only imagine how we're going to flourish, right? So that's why I was always so passionate about it, to be a therapist, and why I wanted people to love and be loved, because love is something that's so pure and free. Right. What people don't realize is that it's free. Hate, it's in our DNA. It's programmed. That's why we are so great at being negative. Negative. But loving someone and being able to be good at it, that's not something that people are willing to be vulnerable, right? Because they think being vulnerable is weakness. So I wish that I could continue my education. And I shouldn't say I wish, because actually, I want to go back to school. I want to have a PhD behind my name. You know why? Because this is a gift that I had, and I never went to school from it. But because I'm not, it's not behind me, doesn't mean that my certification it's not valid. Right? I've worked around with my experiences to apply that. And I think that's why I can be relatable. It's because I am vulnerable. Yeah. I'll tell you, hey, I've gone through a lot of shit. I have this, I have that, and I know this, but I'm willing to share that. And that's why with the kids and with the schools, I think why they connect with us is because we're vulnerable. And I love when we go back to Inspire High, because you know what? That's where I graduated from. And I did. I graduated class president. I graduated with a 2-year scholarship from Inspire High, where a kid like me could get that. Yeah, they made it happen. And when I go back to the schools and I tell them, I'm an alumni from here. Alumni, what does that mean? I graduated from here. But because I graduated from here didn't mean that was the end of me. Right. That doesn't define who I am, because there's a continuation high school behind my name. Look at where I'm at. I'm on a podcast and you're listening to me, like Dave Chappelle says, you clicked on my face. Right. But, but it's the truth. You're choosing to hear my vulnerability. And you could choose to judge it, or you can choose to pull out your piece of paper with your pen and jot down notes. Right. Learn from my mistakes, because I'm willing to share that. Right. And that's where I say I am very wise, because I have gone through those mistakes, trial and error. Like you said, okay, she came prepared today, right? Because I made a mistake. But I chose to either continue that mistake every time you're going to tell me to do it, or I'm going to learn from that mistake from that one time you told me to do it. Right. So that's why I always tell my kids, it's what you do next that matters. We're all going to make mistakes. When I started to be more vulnerable with my kids and be like, yeah, I messed up. Yeah, I used to smoke weed. Yeah, this and yeah, that, where they're just like, you mom? Yeah, man. I have mistakes too, where now these kids are learning like, oh man, so you're not perfect.
Right. And that's why I love doing this show and telling people stories, because people do look at us, whether, however high of a pedestal people put us on, they look at us like, oh wow, like we didn't go through shit. Right. Again, this is why I love doing this. This is why I love having everybody on my show has gone through some type of adversity to get to where they're at. Right. And those stories, I want people to know that we're all human. We've all been down some type of path where we've fallen off. Again, it's never a straight line. There's never a A to B, right? There's always that path. People don't fell off, got back on it. Like I've done, if you know how much shit I've done, it's crazy. Yeah. But people could also look at my backstory and say, oh, damn, like he's very fucking successful. Right. Yeah, I've made it, and I've probably done everything I've ever wanted to do, but that's because I went after it, and not saying that road was easy. No. Like I've made a lot of sacrifices. During my first marriage, I was constantly out 3-4 in the morning. I did. And who says it? Kobe Bryant said this, like he decided he wanted to be the greatest basketball player, but it came with a lot of sacrifices. He had to miss a lot of birthdays, miss a lot of celebrations, miss family time, because he had a sickening work ethic. And he knew he had to do that to be the greatest. So success, again, you can't get to success without going through failure. Yeah. And you go through it a lot.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But even though when you do bring up Kobe, you're right, he did have great work ethic, but he also knew that he had the ability to pivot.
Right.
So what he used to use is the roadmap. Do I continue to go back down into that loop and fall into shit, right? And hurt my family? Because he did have a hiccup in the early stage, right?
Yeah.
Did he continue to do that? No. Did the mistake happen? Yes. Did he learn from that mistake? Absolutely. Right. So what people fail to also realize is that although Kobe did have that, work ethic and he was constantly, but how did he pivot around that? That's when he invested into the helicopter, right?
Yeah.
So he even says it. I was there for drop off and I was there for pickup, and the family was always with him. And whenever he traveled, even when he was away from Vanessa, he invested in their relationship, right? Knowing the favorite songs. He was in a piano, but he learned how to do it. So that's why I always tell people, what you do now, it's okay. We're gonna make the mistakes, but what you do next is what matters, right? We grow every single day. We're not perfect in any way, shape, or form, but will we learn from those mistakes?
We're talking about mistakes, and it's like we're trying to protect our kids from mistakes all the time and trying to make life so much easier. And I'm getting to a phase in my life where I'm seeing my kids are like, they're going to need to make their own mistakes, because that was my biggest growth, actually. My mistakes are my biggest blessing,
Yeah.
So it was like, when do we take that protection off our kids, right? I think that's a discussion that parents need to have.
No, you got to. I think you got to have those discussions and boundaries, because I used to be the same way. Like, and I think as parents, we all did, right? We want to tell our kids our stories, and so they won't make the same mistakes, but they have to, though.
Right.
Like, I actually just had to learn that. Like, even like with my daughter, like, as much as I want to go over there and have this conversation with her about what she's doing, but it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to let you figure it out, because you have to, because you're not going to understand it unless you go through it.
Right. But you can still tell her and remind her that you love her every step of the way.
Yeah.
And I always sometimes tell Brian too, it's the behavior that you want in return that you have to put out.
Yep.
The behavior you want in return, you put out, that's what you're going to get in return. So that's where the vulnerability and all of that. And although you're going to share those experiences or those hiccups that you win, but they can do the same thing. What I said, they can either continue that mistake with the generational baggage, or they can pull out their piece of paper with their pen and be like, oh shoot, they did that. Okay, let me cross that out. Okay, they were able to say, let me utilize that. And that's where my son tells me that, like, Mom, thank you for everything that you do, for your strength, for just being there. Although you're not, good, I don't matter. They matter. But then again, I'm showing them that they don't matter. Everyone else matters. So I do have to be careful with that, because the behavior that I'm putting out is the behavior that they're learning, so I have to then go back and be like, okay, I have to shift that. And it's okay to use, again, those roadmaps, right? Do we continue to go up and then come back down into that pile of, crap? Or are we going to roadmap into positivity? Well, although I don't have this, but I still have that, right? And focus on the good and not focus necessarily on the bad, but don't ignore it, right? With our past and our childhood, don't ignore it. Know that it's there. It's part of your truth and your reality, but how can we pivot? How can we pivot? And I think that that's where we all are today, right? We're in that pivoting stage. Like, oop, I know what to do.
No, it is. And it's still a learning thing. Like, even like I said, when I saw my daughter the other night, she was, Nina was actually on her way taking her to the emergency room. And I kind of joked with her because my daughter always joking, right? So I was like, oh, you going to have surgery? And she started crying. I thought she was joking. So Nina looked at me and she was like, will you hug her? And I'm like, why? I thought she was joking, right? I thought she was fake crying, but she was really crying. She was like, why would you say that? And I was like, oh my God, I'm sorry. So I had to hug her. Like, she was really crying because she was going to the emergency room. She didn't want surgery. Yeah. And it was for something minor, right? Like me and Nina was even like, why are you going to the emergency room? But she wanted to go. So we ended up taking her, right? And she started crying. I felt bad afterwards because she started crying.
Yeah, it's like him and my daughter. Just the other day, what did I say too? Like, you have to be careful with, although she's being a brat, she's being a diva.
Right.
Then he's like, well, I'm going to serve her with the same plate. And I said, well, be careful.
Yeah, you
got to be
can't
careful.
do that.
That's hard.
Because I tried to do that.
Right. That's why I like it not like it, but when I find an opportunity to be a father and to show her some affection and emotional support, I'll take advantage of that. All the time,
No, and that's why, like, I wasn't supposed to go to the emergency room with her, but like how you were just saying just a minute ago, you still have to show them that love and like you care, right? So when she started crying, I gave her a hug and I was, telling her I was sorry, like it was a joke, and she was like, it's okay. So at that moment, I changed my plans that night and I went to the emergency room with her and sat there all night with them. Because I felt like I needed to do it because I was being an asshole.
No, but you have to remember it's a daughter, right? Yeah. So let's say now let's flip it, right? Yeah. What if it was some guy, right, that she's dating that is putting jokes on her like that? As a father, how would you feel? Right? You'd be like, man, let his ass walk outside. I'm going to really show him what's what. So I would tell him that, be like, you got to be careful because if you're yelling, if you're screaming and you're doing, and then you turn around and say, but I love you, what are you teaching them? So then they're going to grow up in life. And even though the guy is yelling, even though he could turn around and be like, but I love you. And they're going to not know their true worth and build their psychological safety to understand like, oh, wait, nah, this ain't a joke. Right. Like my dad don't, because you're her first love. At the end of the day, my dad was still my first love. My dad really never yelled. My dad still loves me. I'm still his baby, I'll still sit in bed and cuddle with him. And there's a different connection that I do have for my dad, that I'm still his baby, la niña, la niña, I'll always be la niña. But he's so tender with me. Right. So that's why when I tell him like, man, I know what it's like you better come get your Nina, but it's the truth because, and he even sees it with my dad when he comes and he gardens and, that's why when my dad got sick, I always say it was one of the biggest pains for me. And I could feel when Brenda was saying that about her dad because that's our first love. Right. That's my daughter's first love. Oh, that's her dad. That's her daddy, and she gets away with murder.
Oh, my dad did too.
Yeah.
You say my kid is so spoiled. It's not even funny.
Yeah, and vice versa with my son. That's my baby boo, all the time. Oh, my little Paquito, and I baby him and all that. Sometimes Meme, she'll look at me all crazy and be like, oh, Ethan did it. But it's because I want him to know what it's like to be treated from a woman. This is the way you got it. And that's where I tell him, there's only certain, he'll be like, oh, you got to, with Melody, da-da-da. But that's not, I get it. We do have a different love and a different understanding, but from a man to your daughter, that's your first love. Right. And vice versa with a mom and a son. But it doesn't mean that even though if you didn't have that, you can still portray it. That's why it's so important with schools, with TVs, and what is put out, because if that's what we're showing them, that's what they're going to think it's supposed to be like with maybe a child that doesn't have that. Right. So that's why it's so meaningful to do these workshops, and even with complete strangers that I meet, I just put the whole thing, building psychological safety, character strengths, highlighting all this. But even that's their takeaway from me. Even if I'm able to touch one person, I've made a difference.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, sometimes we forget our roles as parents. Like a father's role in a daughter's life is to show the daughter how a man should be treating her. That's what we're supposed to be teaching our daughters at a young age and until the rest of their life, until she gets married herself. And the role for a mother to a son is to show to show the son how to treat a woman, how a woman should be treated, you know. And the father's role to a son is to show him how to be a man and how to respect women. And a woman's role for a daughter is to show the daughter how to be a woman and how to be treated, Right.
It was even through a very like innocent conversation that like our son was kind of starting to talk to a girl, and you know, he was very serious, and then I had said, oh, do you want to go to a youth, you know, thing at the church? There'll be other girls or something like that. And you know what he said to me? He said, do you see daddy with other girls? And I said, no. Why? What do you mean? So why would you suggest me to be with someone else or to look at other girls? And it was just a joke. It was something so, but that's what we were putting out. So that's why I say it starts at home. Yeah. It starts at home. What we do inside those walls, that's our contribution back to society. Because I'm teaching my son, although, I mean, you know, now he's a teen, he's, you know, exploring other things, but still it's the foundation. If we would have that in and out, or I'm going to be out and doing this or all of that, or not working through our relationships or even through conversation, that's why it was so hard on my son for me to make that comment like, oh, because he sees this. He sees our true connection. And even when they're not around, that's my best friend. You know, like any little concert or any show and whatever we do, that's my ride or die. You know, that's why I told him this podcast is going to be easy, baby. This is what we do.
It's the Costco anything.
Yeah, that's the best.
Man, I love it. I love it. But wow, man, we are definitely going out of time.
All right.
But man, thank you guys for sharing your story. Seriously, I mean, this is why I love doing what I do. This is why I'm excited about being part of the coalition to make a difference, and we're gonna have fun with this.
Oh yeah.
And we're definitely gonna touch people. I mean, I'm already getting feedback from, you know, even with Brenda's little Poppy, her story. Some of you, I don't know if you saw it, but you know, people are like reaching out to her saying, "Wow, I didn't know that." Like. And like I said, it was only 2 people, and that's not saying 2 people watched it, but 2 people reached out to her, and that's what mattered to me. Like, even if we 1 person, but 2 people reached out to her, and was like, "Wow, I didn't know that about you," and it made a difference to 2 people. Yeah, and that's great.
Vulnerability is strength, y'all. Vulnerability is strength.
So,
testimony.
Exactly, and then, you know, lives. we got to be open up about our conversations, and my story can go deeper. This is more conversations. But we're going to definitely have them. Yeah. I'm excited. I'm truly excited.
The best is yet to come.
Yes.
Amen.
So thank you guys. Thank you, Brian, for joining us on the show. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you. Appreciate you guys, both of you. I mean, being an example of what, you know, couples should do. Like, you know, it's not easy, but you guys are making it, and you guys are doing it together. Yeah. And I love that.
And when we first met you, we were together.
Yeah, you guys was. I remember. Hey, I felt the energy back then.
Yeah,
I did. I felt it back then. I mean, you guys are good people.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
We are the Gottis, right, baby?
The Gottis. Doing it the Gotti way, y'all.
Hey.
Anyways, we're out of here. Till next week. See ya.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Be well.